Welcome back. This is the concluding Q&A. And if you're just joining us, you can find all the preceding sections in our playlist on our YouTube channel. So you'll want to head over and check that out so you don't miss anything. Enjoy.
Now we're going to get into the Q&A a little bit here. Take a look at some popular questions that we've gotten from our customers and specifically around some of the research that we've been doing and talking with people about our clients, prospects, folks we talk to at shows. So let's jump into it here with our first question. We're going to look at what metrics should manufacturers be using to measure marketing ROI. So I'll kick this off as well. So it really depends on your company and like what are the goals that you're trying to measure, right? So when again, going back to what I was talking about, I think previously, are you selling products? Are you selling services? Or is your sales process about establishing relationships and partnerships with other companies? Those are going to change the metrics that you care about. And I think a big part of this has to do with the timeline of what the sales cycle looks like. So the more you're saying, I'll come back to this probably a couple times over the course of the research report, even just this Q&A, but the more you're selling a product, something that you're just like, you're buying this thing, it's a piece of software, it's a piece of machinery, it's a widget, whatever it is that you're selling, the more it's a product that somebody just goes, yeah, I want to buy that thing, the shorter your sales cycle is likely to be. Sales cycle gets longer, probably the more expensive, the product is, or the more difficult it is to implement. But products tend to have shorter sales cycles. Services have slightly longer sales cycles. And if what you're selling is like a business partnership, like you want to get into business with us and we're going to be joined at the hip for the next decade, that's going to have the longest sales cycle. And when sales cycles are that long, and again, this goes back to like how often should you check your metrics, right? If the metric that you're checking is like closed sales and conversion rates, you might be waiting years for that data, right? Mm-hmm. It's not gonna update overnight. So you need to look at different metrics that are going to give you some insight into, are we on the right track, right? Mm-hmm. And so when that's the case, you're looking more at engagement-based metrics to see like, is the story that we're telling to our audience resonating? Are people spending more time on page? Are our visits up? Is the engagement on our social up? Like, is this, you're looking basically to see like, is this message resonating? Because the message resonating is the first step of a very long process, but it can give you some sense of like whether you're on the right track versus if you are, again, you're selling products and it's a very specific thing and a very tight sales cycle, then you can really drill down more into metrics that are going to respond more quickly because you're selling either like higher volume where there's a shorter sales cycle, or it's very easy to see whether the tactics you're using are working or not. I mean, Ian, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think you covered it really well. It's a difficult, I think for so many questions, the answer is, well, it depends. But like you said, when you're dealing with especially with like an expensive service or being joined at the hip for 10 years, things shift towards more of a positioning standpoint where you're not going to get this, boom, I can track my conversions. I got a 30% conversion rate on this ad. That's going to sell me a $2 million factory widget. Like, it's not that easy. And so you really have to look at those things. And maybe even the metrics that you want to start measuring are things that have to do with existing customers and start trying to look almost towards, I guess maybe a metric isn't the right word, but just almost the attitudes and behaviors of those customers that you have existing, and start looking maybe towards the behaviors of the type of customer business that you're trying to attract.
I think, Ian, that ties into something that I was thinking about earlier when we were talking about siloing in departments. Sometimes what you're asking your marketing department to do actually doesn't have a lot to do with sales ROI. We work with companies, they come to us and they say, we want to improve the way we're perceived in our industry. We want to be seen as thought leaders. Okay, well, if you want to be seen as a thought leader, then the metrics we're going to establish to understand whether or not your message is being seen by other people is going to be very different from sales-oriented metrics. If you come to your marketing team and you say, we want you to help us build our relationship with our current existing customers, again, very different numbers are going to help you understand whether or not you're actually achieving that. And if that's the case, then you need to understand that's what you're asking your marketing department to do, and measure the success of that relationship based on whether or not they're achieving that. You don't want to come to your marketing department and say, we want you to help us become thought leaders, and then start measuring a bunch of sales ROI statistics and say you're failing as a marketing department because you're not affecting the sales ROI numbers that we have over here, when we also direct you to put all of your actual energy over into this other goal over in this other place. And so and particularly this is important if if you're in a company and you're working with your marketing team, or you're working with an agency, and then you bring someone new in and that person is trying to understand the relationship, it can really set a upend an agency relationship if you bring in a new marketing director and that person, thinks that that the agency is supposed to be helping with sales, and instead the agency has been helping with internal customers, and then that person is trying to understand what's been going on and gets the sense that nothing has been happening. The team isn't doing their job. Understand what you're asking marketing department to do. Make sure that the way you're measuring it is attached to that goal, and don't bring in numbers that don't align with what you've actually tasked them toward.
On the subject of alignment, I think that leads into our next question here about how can sales and marketing become more aligned. I think there's a lot to say here, but before we lose the point, one of the things you mentioned, Laura, was that in some cases, maybe your current marketing goal is to reduce customer churn, right? Yes. Customer churn is a big issue that we see, particularly among the clients we have who are providing like software technology solutions to their customers, where there's turnover in that customer base. And to them, keeping a customer is actually better than a new sale, in the sense that retaining a customer that sticks around, you're going to keep for longer as a lifetime customer than just any random new sale who may have no allegiance to you yet. So in addition to how can sales and marketing become more aligned, there's also kind of a third bucket here that we haven't really looked at yet, which is also customer service. Customer service, just like sales, their job is impacting the bottom line. Their goal for impacting the bottom line is customer retention. I think that's another one of those audiences that we need to think about staying aligned with as well. But at any rate, how can sales and marketing become?
Yes.
I think this is one of those moments that this is a short thought, Ian, but like when you talk to a marketing director and they're telling you, I'm so overwhelmed, like this need to talk to all these people and get alignment. It's why you see people who feel like they don't have any time. Ian, your way.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say that I thought, my earlier idea of really thinking of sometimes embracing the differences, I thought it was actually a really deep insight that I made. But I think that, sometimes being in alignment, like it's not necessarily this. Sometimes it's just this. Sometimes you're running in parallel tracks. And so, I think maybe the first step in becoming more aligned is figuring out what kind of alignment you're in. It may not be the kind of best friends club that you imagine it to be, where you're Jim and Pam and you have this like 3-season long romance. It might be more of a Michael and Dwight thing, where you're just like, you're parallel characters and you're not completely embedded in each other's storylines. Like you have individual characteristics that play off of one another, and I think that's a lot of the time issues that you run into in general in business is, sacrificing the good in the name of the perfect, or in the name of the great. I think there's a saying that's phrased correctly, but
The perfect
just
is the enemy of
understand.
the good.
Perfect is the enemy of.
Of the good, right? Yeah, and so I think that is often going to be the key. Is just sometimes you have to embrace the differences instead of seeing them as something that's unreconcilable. Sometimes it's just easier to be whole and separate.
I think
But in terms of so 1 second, Laura, I think in terms of like the first connecting link that you need to have though is looking at how you have to have some kind of data exchange. And so you have to look at how you're going to exchange that data, whether it's through your tech stack in the form of a CRM or by like actual meeting and verbally communicating those things. But you have to have data flowing both ways because you need each other's information in order to complete the picture you're both trying to show leadership about what's going on. Laura.
Yeah, well, to latch onto your idea, Ian, and expand on it a little bit, when you're talking about working side by side, well, let's defend the idea of siloing for half a second. What's the purpose of having a silo? It's so that you can have people specializing in the area that they're really, really, really good at and focusing on that and not having this responsibility creep or this confusion over who is actually supposed to be in charge of what thing. So a good way that you can, maintain that efficiency while also making sure that people aren't, the problem with silos is people don't talk to each other, right? So there's nothing that actually hinders this specialization and puts that at odds with communication between teams. As long as you have the roles really well defined and people understand what their responsibilities are and then who to talk to on the other team when they need to communicate, you can get a lot more alignment going without having to sacrifice the efficiency or having people step on each other's toes or having signals get crossed, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think in my experience, mostly I see this where there's just the old school sales guy, and there's like a guy with like a stained flannel shirt and a mustache, and he is like the king of the Rolodex. He's been the king of the Rolodex since, well, I would have said 1985, but now I have to say 1995. And and he knows every customer, or, there's somebody in there who is almost like the source of truth of the organization. They're like the storyteller, the history keeper, the record keeper. There we go. And I think sometimes people want to take so much ownership over something that, anyone trying to participate in that feels like it's obfuscating their role in the story. And I think, like I said, I think that because sales and marketing are so performance oriented, it can become so personal. It's really difficult to reconcile those things. And like Susan said, it's a leadership issue, and and by extension a culture issue.
Yeah.
When those differences become intractable, I think a lot of the time, 61% of the time, people can respect each other enough to extend the benefit of the doubt and the trust to make things work without having friction. But it's when we become entrenched in these roles and these ideas and leadership's inability to say, hey, let's work together towards a goal and not let that take root. That's really where that's where change needs to happen. That's where you have to find a catalyst.
This isn't always an easy problem to solve.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I love the kind of that character archetype that you introduced of like that salesperson who's been with the company for, decades and knows everything. That person is often the person that if marketing is just going their own way a little bit, and for instance, they've been talking with leadership, they've come up with this new brand initiative, you're rolling out a new brand, you have new messaging, it's great, everyone's excited about this new vision for how the company is changing. That guy who's been there for decades is going to resent it if he didn't get talked to, if no one talked to him. Because again, he's been on the front lines. He wants to see his experience reflected in what's going on there. And
there's a good chance that it misses something if they didn't include him. He's got a lot of institutional knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's the record keeper.
When I'm coming up with marketing materials, I want to talk to that sales guy and say, hey, before I go invent something new from a whole cloth, like, what do you have that I could use as a base? Sometimes that salesperson is like, oh yeah, like I have this resource that I typed up on PowerPoint one day 15 years ago, and boy, does it close. Would you make it look nice? You know?
Right? Like,
yes,
yeah.
yes, give that to me. We can make that look beautiful. Like, don't just hold on to stuff. Don't go off your own way and make something for yourself and then never share it with everyone. Share it with us so that we can make it nice and polished and give it back to you. And then will you really wow your prospects now with this thing that looks as good as the thought you put into it?
Yeah, like I want to put him on the website. He's like a mascot, you know. Like sometimes you just have to like turn the problem on its head, honestly, and just be like, you know what, I'm going to make this public facing because all these people do know you, so I am going to put you on the website. And then it's like, whoa.
No, we have actually seen that as a converting tactic for people on specifically on kind of like lead gen focused landing pages. You can just put the sales guy right on there and be like, you got a question about this? Talk to Jim. You know?
Yeah. If you follow through on it, it's a win. If you don't follow through on it, then
exactly.
You know, go with God.
So yeah. One of the other things we hear a lot is just, you know, getting to know our customers on a deeper level sounds great, but like, how do you do that? Where do you start?
Thank you. I can take that one. My favorite thing to do when we bring on a new client, it's always getting into the weeds with them, really knowing who they are, learning about them and their business and their customers. And I touched upon this a little bit earlier. You start by talking to their team. As an agency, we start by talking to their team. We start by interviewing people and saying, you know, leadership, tell us who you are. Person who's on the shop floor, tell us who you are. Tell us what you do all day long, you know. Customer service person, tell us what you do, tell us what you hear. Salesperson, tell us what, you know, all of those roles. That's as an agency what we're doing when we're trying to understand our new client. For the client, getting to understand their customers, you know, look at who you are and look at who the people are in your organization, who are the front lines of your business, who are actually out there talking to your customers and interacting with them every day. Again, that's customer support, that's sales. Those people are gonna be having direct access and direct interactions with your customers on a day-to-day basis, and they're gonna have gleaned so much information from that that they're just a treasure trove of understanding, you know, who your customers are and what they need. There's a lot of customers that we talk to where the people that they are serving are actually very much like themselves. They might have a team, they're consultants, right? And they have a team of experts in their company, and those consultants exist to help solve problems for other people who they just don't have a big enough team. They're almost an engineering agency for other companies that do engineering, right? And talk to those people, you know, sit down with the engineers at your own company and say, hey, you know, you are the consultants out there providing information to our customers. What are you hearing from them all day long? You know, we've worked with people who will have employees that will go work basically for 3 months at, you know, with one of the customers directly. They're in offices every day. Like, they're going to know who that customer is. They're going to have that really, really, really deep relationship. Talk to them, pull that together, you know. There's the people within your own organization already have a wealth of knowledge. What you need is a way to kind of pull that out of everyone's heads and start putting it together in a place that everyone else has access to, particularly your marketing team, who might not be engineers, but they're certainly capable of understanding the engineers that work with you. They might not be manufacturers, but they're capable of understanding the manufacturers that you want to work with. And beyond that, there's always other tools you can dig into. You can do your own research, like what we've done to understand our clients that we're talking about in this report. You can do some of your own research yourself. you can look at your competitors, see what your competitors are doing, what they're talking to. If you're at trade shows and conventions, taking some time just to explore the trade floor show, and seeing who else is out there. You don't have to come in with a hard pitch. You don't have to come in selling right from the get go. But just wandering the trade show and see what people are doing and what business is like for them. I mean, Eric, I know you've been out on the trade show for yourself these days. Like the amount that you learned, I think, is a lot just from being in that environment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a fair amount of it that you just sort of like pick up through osmosis at a certain point. But every trade show I go to, there's always at least a few booths or whatever that really jump out at me, where they've got some new product or new service or new way of presenting things that sparks some inspiration, and that's always a pleasure.
I'd also add that in terms of people being honest with you, anonymity is really powerful in allowing people to feel like they can tell you the truth about something. And a really good mechanism for any business to have is an opportunity for people to leave you anonymous feedback for your clients. You can provide all your clients with a link. You could do just a simple Google form or something like that, and set it up so that you're not tracking their IP. Whatever.
Truly anonymous. This is not the place to implement your marketing tech stack to
now. Sometimes people don't believe that, and rightly so. So this is where having a third party like your agency, like a research partner, to do something like that for you gives people confidence that they can tell the truth, and it's not going to get back and impact their relationship with your organization. And if you have that opportunity, it's great to set up just a vehicle and tell every client that you work with when they get started, hey, we have an anonymous feedback thing, and we will never know whether something comes from you or somebody else. So if there's something that we need to know, you're free to tell us anytime. And just having an open door that promises true anonymity for people to give you negative feedback is really, really important. Because for most of us, the negative feedback we needed to hear will leave with the client when they fire us.
Yeah, it comes too late to save us.
It's too late. It's too late. So something like that is also a really good practice to think about as an organization.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant. I love that.
All right. So when we talk about the tech stack, what digital tools are most necessary for success?
We were talking about the biggest one, the Swiss Army knife, is ultimately your website, and that may be not the answer that people want to hear, versus a SaaS tool or a tool that promises that you can fire your developers and not invest in having a website that is fully Swiss Army-ified, but that oftentimes is the hub that connects the other parts of your tech stack together: your CRM, email management, social management, your collaboration tools, all those things tie together, and that's kind of a hub. There was one thing I wanted to highlight that I thought was important, especially actually in marketing, where we tend to be a little bit fast and loose with process, is a process management tool, something where you're tracking, where you're defining, storing, and tracking your SOPs and creating a standardized process in your marketing. Again, we talk a lot about ROI and tracking those metrics and everything, and tracking metrics, your metrics are only as good as what goes into them. And if the process is different every time, then the measurements you're taking every time are not helpful. And so having something like that in the marketing team, where you're having those standard operating procedures really defined, is honestly gonna help you collaborate with the sales and engineers, who I think by definition often have a little bit better defined processes, and it's going to help them see that you're taking it seriously because, you know, as marketers, I think we all have a love of shiny things, and new shiny things come out all the time. And right now it's AI. And so when we're working for something where trends are changing, markets are changing, we're responding, we're adaptable because we respond to really radically changing circumstances all the time. But we're also can be a little bit fickle and a little bit distracted by a tool that promises to do things, and having something as stoic as a standard operating procedure not only just strengthens the backbone of your marketing team, it also just enables collaboration much more easily when you know that each team member can be plug and play within the system.
I think there's a sense about well, I think any tool, anyone who works with tools kind of knows the difference between your trusty thing that you go back to time again and the gadget that you got that just doesn't work. You know, like if you love to cook, the knife that you use all the time, the pot that is your go-to pot. That those very specific tools that you come back to that you're like, I cannot imagine being in a kitchen without this thing. And then the stuff that you bought that you're like, this accomplishes exactly one thing, and it's not very good at doing that one thing that it accomplishes. I think when we're thinking about marketing, the marketing tools that we turn to are things like, you have to have an email tool that will let you automate, like MailChimp, or Salesforce, that you can use to send out emails to your contact list. You have to have a CRM, and some people have a very basic CRM. It could be a spreadsheet, but something that is tracking those numbers for you. Project management is a big one. There are moving pieces. Having some project management tools that you can rely on, really essential. We have a tool that we use as well for keyword research, and obviously tracking analytics. Google Analytics and things like that. All important tools. When you get beyond that and people start coming up, like the further you get away from that core group of territory, like the more skeptical you have to be about any new product that shows up claiming.
Do you really need this new kitchen implement?
Yes.
It will peel potatoes so much faster than your other things, but all it does is peel potatoes.
Then the potato peeler that I already have, that also peels carrots.
Well, and I
definitely at one point bought a crank apple peeler. I will peel apples so fast now, and it's
I think, Laura, too,
I'm good at peeling apples.
Sometimes the answer isn't another piece of software, it's somebody else to handle something for you. So if you have an agency relationship, there may be tools that can actually be in the agency's tech stack that you have access to, or that connect with your tech stack, but they're not things that you have to own, manage, and probably ever look at. So some of the answer to this question is really, what kind of resources do you have internally, and what are their objectives, and what other resources do you have to help you?
Every tool needs the craftsman that's using the tool. So
it might not be somebody in your organization. Actually, it might be a contractor, or although you have to be careful with data when you're thinking about a contractor or somebody outside your company having access to data. But a lot of things can, I think, determine the answer to this question.
As far as data goes as well, the one thing I wanted to highlight here as well in terms of necessity is that for marketing, a lot of marketing, it's your analytics gathering tools, and for sales, a lot of it's CRM. Those aren't mutually exclusive. There's obviously overlap, but the thing I want to highlight here is that you need to start gathering data, and ideally you have already been gathering data for years, but if you haven't, the sooner you start, the better, and you can figure the rest out later. But if you don't capture the data now, you can't go back and capture it later, no matter how good your other tools.
You mean your
are.
apple peeler can't spontaneously create apples for you?
No, it
can
cannot.
actually have apples.
So
Apple's
this
not
is the one
included.
where a lot of tools are set it and forget it. You set up your analytics. If you forgot about your analytics, 5 years later, your analytics data is all there. If you set up a CRM and your sales team was resistant to using a CRM and they did not record data in your CRM, it's gone. It's gone. Unless like it was recorded somewhere else and someone else wants to do like the manual data entry of pulling it all together. No, I've never seen anyone want to do this. It's basically, it's gone. And so and again, it can actually be an Excel spreadsheet. I love Excel and I love making formulas and piecing them all together and then watching them auto update when I fill things in. I do it all the time. But like record the data. You can always import the data into something else later, but you have to record it in the first place. So, all right.
Misled.
We do need to keep this moving.
Oh. Cool.
We could do an entire podcast on every single one of these questions.
Right.
Maybe
you will.
I will save my idea for a blog post.
Awesome. I love it. All right. How often should I be checking metrics? In the interest of time, I'm going to say I already answered this one.
I think so.
Yeah, I think
when
that's
I was
fair.
going over my stuff earlier.
Extensively.
Go back and watch key point 3.
Yeah.
How can we get better buy-in from leadership on marketing? I'm going to keep this one short and sweet as well, because again, I already touched on a lot of this, but demonstrating ROI is how you get buy-in from leadership, and that means you really do need to pick and own a number. You don't need to own 1 million numbers. In fact, like owning fewer numbers is better, but it needs to be a real number, and the number needs to be tied to actual ROI. So the simplest way to do that. And again, Excel is great. I build these little sheets in Excel all the time. Is you pull out what a sale is worth, what the acceptable cost of sale is for closing those sales, and then your conversion rate on leads, and then you start filling in the data on basically how you got those leads. This works great if you're doing paid media, because you can fill in like the amount of spend required to get a conversion, and you can build an Excel sheet that will basically spit out like a pass-fail grade basically on whether or not the efforts you're doing are cost-effectively producing ROI. But again, it amazes me how long you can go if you don't be very deliberate about this. It amazes me how far you can get down the road working internally at a company as their marketing department or as an agency facilitating a client without specifically looking at what is a sale worth, what is an acceptable cost of sale, what is your average conversion rate, and what does success look like. And you need to get buy-in from leadership on what success looks like. So there's agreement as you go forward on whether or not you're meeting those goals.
Exactly. You got to get buy-in by asking how you get buy-in. And if they can't answer that question, then you have to have the conversation.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm going to add a short addendum there. If the problem with buy-in is a lack of understanding about what marketing is, if it's an education problem, tap into the experts that you have around you. That could be your agency, that could be marketing thought leaders, that could be conferences that you could ask your leadership to attend, maybe with someone from your agency, to get a better understanding of what marketing is doing now and what the opportunities are. So if that's behind the buy-in problem, there are ways to solve that too, and get support from people who can help you with that.
I love that idea of it being a matter of education, because sometimes you can go to the leadership and you say, "But how do we get buy-in?" And they say, "We want this thing." And sometimes it's part of our job to say, "Are you considering these other things that would also be really, really valuable to you as a business?" And if they're open to that education, that's the foundation of a great relationship.
Yeah, if they think marketing is just about pay-per-click ads, you've got an education opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
About both the tactics the strategies and tactics, but also the possibilities.
This
Mhm.
is actually goes to an insight we got out of the research report where we saw there was a clear misunderstanding from some respondents about the difference between marketing and advertising. Everybody universally loves to talk about Mad Men in this industry. People are like, oh, Mad Men. And I'm like, I love Mad Men too. I'm not knocking Mad Men. They are running an advertising agency. Advertising and marketing are not the same thing. And you will see a lot of misunderstanding around, you say marketing and people go, I don't buy ads. And it's like, okay, we're not talking about buying ads.
It's a very complex landscape these days. Even if you thought you knew it 5 years ago, it's radically changed.
Yep.
So lean on people who can help your marketing team, your leadership team, get the understanding and the education that they need so that they can, help move things forward instead of being a block.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
So yeah, we were talking a lot about marketing, but like what strategically should I be doing? What marketing works? So with that very targeted question, we'll open up the floor here.
I mean, I love learning about our customers' businesses. Like we're in this really fascinating territory, manufacturing technology, all of this stuff. You have people that are on like this cutting edge of engineering, doing some things that are just absolutely, to me, fascinating. And I'm always surprised when I hear people say, my business is too boring to talk about. It's like, I dare you. I'm sure there's something actually incredibly interesting. And I know there is, because I have gotten on YouTube and watched YouTube videos of what friction welding looks like. And it is fascinating. And I want to tell the world. So which is to say that it's going to depend a lot on everyone's business. Think about what your time to sale is like. If you have a 2-year sales process, that is going to be a very different marketing campaign from if you are actually on a website selling screws, and what you are going to do depends on who you are and what your business is. That's why the first thing you have to be doing is actually understanding the customer, understanding who they are, understanding, for us, we have to understand our customers, what they're doing. We have to understand who their audiences are and what their audiences need. If you're dealing with something where education is paramount, look at your website and ask yourself how many resources you have on your website that are devoted to actually educating your customers. Do you have a company blog that you publish articles on? Who's actually taking part in that blog? We've worked with customers where they have engineers on their team, and the engineers take turns to write a blog post, and they publish a blog post every week, and they cycle, one engineer might only publish an article once every 3 months, but when it's their turn, they got to have something. Sometimes that works, and sometimes the engineers are like, we're tired of writing articles, or we didn't talk to each other about what articles we were going to write, and now we've written the same article. I wrote 200 words and then I was done, and this guy wrote 3,000 words, and which should I be doing? Your agency can come into you. They can help coordinate that schedule. They can help do some research for people and say, hey, you have this idea from an article, here's how you should be targeting it. We can help with the editorializing words. We can help with editing the articles that you're putting together to make sure they have keywords included. That could be an education thing that you're doing as part of becoming a thought leader, right? You have a software to sell. Do you have demos on your website showing what that software looks like? Are you on LinkedIn at all? And do you have anyone on LinkedIn who is the face of your company, who can be using the fact that they know 2,000 people in your industry to get more eyes on what you're doing? We're surprised, at least I'm surprised equally, by the companies we've worked with who have someone who basically says, I like being on LinkedIn. I like networking with people. I have 2,000 people in my group, and I want you to help me get more stories out on my feed. I want to have more articles on our website that are showing off the good work we do so that I can take them and I can post them on my feed so that people can come and see them. Like, that's amazing. And then we have companies and there's no one there who wants to be anywhere publicly facing on their company, and then they wonder why they can't get traction on social media. You have to have someone in your company who's willing to actually stand up and hit share. And if they're at a marketing event, if they're at a conference, they have to be willing to go around and make those connections and collect a business card and then reach out to that person later on and say, hey, we met, connect with me on LinkedIn. Video is a huge part of it. Like I mentioned YouTube. People in this industry go to YouTube to look at video and learn about things a lot. So having video resources is a big part of showing your expertise, but also just having a brand video, something that shows your team, shows that you're real people. You're not AI, you're not stock footage. You have your real factory it's a real building, it's a real shop floor. If the thing that sells your company is the fact that you have a 200 square foot shop that can build machines, get a video of it, put it out there and show it to people. That's all part of marketing.
So basically the answer to this question is, it depends on the answers to everything else we've been talking about.
Yes, it does. It does.
Answer this, right? Because it's audience. It's what's your niche or your part of the industry.
Exactly.
Like what is your organization most intent on doing in terms of moving the needle for yourselves? Like all of those things come in to answer this question, which it's so powerful to think about why you need to go through all of that. I mean, we've been talking for a while about these things, but it really boils down to going through this process to answer that question for yourself and your organization, doesn't it?
Because there's so many things you could be doing is the thing.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, if you
all
want
that discovery work to know what is the thing that you should be focusing on now.
If you want a nice, short, pithy answer, that the kind of marketing that works is the kind of marketing that your audience is interested in. So start by understanding your audience, figure out where they live, figure out what they care about, and that everything else will follow from there.
Yeah, I think the best strategy is helping, and I think the kind of marketing that works and the kind of marketing that is helpful, it provides value through its existence. And you have to go through that process to figure out what's helpful to your target audience. But I think that focusing on, everybody knows you're trying to sell them something, so being self-serving just is obvious, right?
Yeah.
So you just try to be helpful.
But we certainly saw in this research
beautiful.
how differently decision makers in manufacturing are sort of approaching this whole question, which is why there's so much to talk about, right? And you could see the spectrum of people, from those who figure they really have it nailed and what they're doing, to the folks who know they don't have it nailed but are really trying to get there, and the folks who probably don't have it nailed because they really either don't understand it well or aren't utilizing it, have not prioritized it for their organization, and it creates all sorts of other opportunities and challenges depending on which group you're in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Next one. Should I be running ads? I think this is really quick. I think we've touched on it at a couple different points. But yeah, advertising and marketing are not the same thing. Advertising, just short answer is that advertising is going to be more effective the more that you're selling a product, and probably less effective the closer you are to the business partnership, long-term relationship side of the spectrum. The more it's about services and long-term integration. At the same time, I would say bear in mind that there are different kinds of ads. So again, on the product side of advertising, some advertising is about capturing existing demand. So that's primarily what paid search is about. Paid search is about saying existing demand is out there. People are looking for this. I want to be at the top of the results when someone looks. This is different from demand generation advertising, which is saying, I know my audience is out there. They don't know about me. They don't know there's a solution to their problem. I need to raise awareness. And that's what demand generation advertising about, which is much more suited to digital. As far as digital media goes, anyway, paid social is much more suited to that. But I would say that there's particularly when you get into that demand generation, raising awareness, that's going to be more suited to more kinds of businesses than paid search, which is not going to be effective for everyone. But you should really think about, again, who your audience is and how you're trying to reach them, and like, is it feasible that this is going to be a compelling thing that will motivate them to want to do business with?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, last one, and we'll call it a wrap. Is AI a good investment? We couldn't get through a whole webinar without talking about AI. So we have at least one AI dedicated question to prove that we're alive in 2024. So
exactly.
Are there any AI tools out there that are showing a positive ROI for marketing?
Short answer, probably no.
Yeah.
What we've discussed at length is really that AI right now in the state it's in is like hiring an intern, which was super cool in 2008. Everybody wanted one. They could get coffee. It was brilliant. But for actually providing value to your business, it takes a lot of investment to get it to become useful sometimes. There are ways you can scale and increase efficiency with these tools, but for the kind of B2B marketing we're talking about, which is really relationship driven, really expertise driven, that's not just trying to churn out as much generic stuff as we can. It really, in order to train the AI and get it to perform the kind of tasks you want it to, or to perform to the level you need it to, is going to take an equal or greater upfront investment than doing it yourself or engaging with a contractor or some other combination of tools in your tech stack. But it is something that it's upon us, it's happening, and it's not going away.
Change everything. I think we just don't know what that everything. We don't know how.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that I think there's a way in which I think you're almost doing interns a disservice there, Ian, because the intern will eventually grow and can keep growing. And
I really hope
limit.
the AI doesn't ever. Yeah, I mean, but the point at which, yes,
there's a hard limit. I think, particularly the way that stuff works today, where AI just hits the limit and can't. The best hope I see for AI is seeing AI get to a point where they can help. They basically can be a personal assistant to your employees, right? Giving each employee an extra tool to help supercharge the stuff that they're already doing. Maybe that's where we can see some use from AI. Every now and then I sit down with the AI and I try to say, can I find a way to get this to help me do something? Is there a task I can give it that is useful? And at least in terms of content writing right now or research. Right now, it's so far behind because, again, every business is unique. Customers are unique. Everyone has a very specific, individualized story that they're trying to tell. And AI is only going to ever give you something back that's very generic. And you know this. If you've ever read copy written by AI, your brain just goes into this fog. It's comprehensible, grammatically correct language, but it's so hard to read that I sit there and I feel like, did I lose the ability to read? Because those are words on screen.
Yeah, it's hard to read without losing focus. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what I mean by fog, right? There's obviously also very well publicized issues right now with accuracy and can you trust what the AI is giving you? I think about this sometimes when I think, okay, well, I have a bunch of data I'm supposed to pull together. I'm out researching stuff. Could I give AI a list of websites and say, here's 20 websites, go tell me something about those 20 websites, or here's 100 websites, tell me. The question is, it would give me an answer. I don't think I could trust the answer it would give me to be accurate. So I still have to go through and look at everything manually to understand what, and at that point, it's still not doing the job that we expect it to
Right.
do. So in the
Um,
future, maybe as it exists, we keep checking.
Yeah, one of the reasons this question is here is that lots of people are asking it. I've seen this even recently come up on some of the professional like marketing forums that I'm on, specifically ones even focused on industrial marketing. And people are being asked by their decision makers, their bosses, hey, how are you implementing AI? How soon is AI going to start to replace people so that we can, cut unnecessary positions or so that we don't have to hire new people or whatever. And people are really struggling to communicate to the folks who don't have to use it every day what it's actually good at and what it can accomplish. And I think the if there's any takeaway that's going to be super useful here, other than saying it's not there yet, it's that you need to set expectations with your own internal leadership and with yourself, I suppose, about what you can reasonably expect AI to do, and that if you don't do that, then you're waiting for other folks to bring you unrealistic expectations, and then the ball's kind of in your court, and you're struggling to return it and go, well, hang on now. So it's definitely worth exploring. It's definitely something I think we're all experimenting with, but we do need to be very clear and upfront about setting expectations about the actual output that you're going to get right now, because a lot of it is not usable finished product. We even get pushback from the AI on stuff we try to get it to do, where it'll do part of it and then it'll be like, I'm not going to finish this, you finish it. And it'll give you instructions for how to do it yourself. And it, which is mind blowing, but it's actually, there's a term for it. There's the AI hallucinations. I think it's called AI hesitancy or something, or AI resistance, where for various reasons, we're actually struggling right now with AI, like even completing the tasks that it ought to be able to complete. It won't complete them. So I think just being realistic about where we're at with this, but also acknowledging, the writing's on the wall. At some point, this is going somewhere, but we need to be very clear in the meantime about setting expectations about where it's at currently, or we're going to have to, be fielding uncomfortable questions that we didn't do a good job of kind of pre-qualifying.
So it sounds like, Eric, if you're a viewer whose organization is working with agencies and marketing consultants or whatever already, and they're not hearing sort of a measured, cautiously optimistic sort of perspective from those marketing experts, they may not be getting the same level of sort of awareness around some of the risks and challenges associated with using AI. That you want to have an agency or a marketing team internally or whatever that has a healthy dose of skepticism right now about incorporating this into your marketing activities in some ways. Sounds like
it works the best the more you put into it. I guess, which again, it really emphasizes that it is not replacing people. Right. So where I've had it work the best for me is like occasionally I'll be like writing up a proposal and I know what the 5 value proposition bullet points I want to be are. And I'm just like, man, it's been a long day and I do not have the brain juice left to like write these, but I will just bang out like note style. Here are the 5 points I want. Dump it into like, ChatGPT and be like, just give this back to me as English. And it'll spit it back out and I'll go, that's pretty close. And then I'll even go in and I'll edit it again. But like, it's, it was useful. It moved the ball forward when I was like, man, I don't have the energy to do this right now. Yeah. But that's like the level of useful return that you're getting out of it. You get too far beyond something that you're not really carefully monitoring, and it's going to stop working. Like, or it's good at editing something that if you wrote a paragraph and you're like, this doesn't fit, make this paragraph half as long. You can just copy, paste, make it half as long, and it'll be like, whoop, I dropped some words. And I'm like, yeah, that worked. All right, great. Like, but I mean, come on, I already wrote the paragraph, like, so it's just like, don't assume that it's this magic genie that's going to grant everything. Just
Not yet.
Not yet. So,
Right.
all righty. Wrapping up here, what's next? So, believe it or not, there is more. After talked through. This is just the beginning, and we wanted to start by grabbing some key insights into the research that we've conducted. Again, with Susan. Thank you, Susan, for doing the research and for joining us for this.
My pleasure. It was such a fascinating set of data to work with. Really interesting. So yeah, I love that.
Well, if you like the presentation, you can download the presentation that we went through today to share with your team, your bosses, whoever you want to share with. But beyond that, we're coming out with a research report that is going to be a much more in-depth and detailed breakdown of the research. I'd like to say that it's going to cover all of the findings from the research, but honestly, there's so much meat on that bone that even the research report, I think, is going to be our first pass at the major points that we want to cover. But there's going to be a lot more than we covered here in that research report. So if you use the link here, you can go to the landing page that we've set up to give you everything you need around the research report, including the ability to participate in next year's research survey. If you're interested, our research is only as good as the data that we get. And we'd like to do this research again and have a 2025 and a 2026 report. So if you get the research report that we put together, if you find that it's useful and you're getting value out of it, we'd love to get your input on the next iteration of this so we can just continue to make it better. I do also want to note that on the landing page for the research report, we'll also have a link to a live visualization of the data that's fully interactive. So if you'd like, you can get into the data yourself and you can see how it's all mapped out and click through the different questions and slides and filters and so forth to really get a hard look at where we're getting all of this from. And if in general you'd just like more insights, more action from us, follow us on LinkedIn for just more B2B marketing insight focused on the manufacturing technology sector. And I guess we're Build Create Studios. So
we have been Build Create.
We have been.
Thanks, everybody. It was a great conversation. That was fun.
Thank you for sticking with it.
Bye, everybody.
And that concludes our webinar for the 2024 Research Report, B2B Marketing Mindsets from Believing to Achieving. Thanks for sticking with us. I hope you found it informational and entertaining and enjoyed it. And if you want to connect with us more, you can find us on LinkedIn at buildcreate.com. And in the content description below, we'll have the PDF, the DataViz tool, and the quiz, just like always. Thanks for watching.